Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Young. I am the owner and founder of Adaptive Perspective and the Adaptive Perspective social media platforms. And I am back with just more strategy on the market at large and how we can use closed-end funds to our advantage. I will apologize in advance. I've got some kind of drainage and allergy going on. So if I cough, yeah, apologize in advance. So the disclaimer is this is an unedited video. Who knows what you'll hear in the background as I film these in my house. I am not a financial advisor. I am a strategist and a financial strategist, and I don't speak like the herd. My goal is to not be in the herd. My goal is to not follow the herd, and therefore I walk in limited company, and sometimes I walk alone. I I guess the last disclaimer is that I've shortened my videos. There used to be a bunch of strategy embedded at the top of these videos, and I tried to make a separate strategy video that I could update when needed in hopes of cutting down the length of these videos. So if you want the overall strategy, go check out that video. But what I would mention, and what I will mention, is that I didn't honestly take a ton of notes. Normally, I have a ton of notes and I have stuff I want to get into. I didn't take a lot of notes this week. And my goal is to kind of shoot from the hip in a way. I mean, I have notes to make sure I steer myself where I need to get to, but it's kind of weird, honestly, on my end of things. It's one of those weeks where it was, I know what we need to do. And it's like, what about all the data? I know what we need to do. And when I was thinking about stuff today, it was still like, don't make it harder on yourself than it needs to be. This is what we need to do. Like, stick with this, and that's it. So, uh, other things that I'll mention for this week. I mean, the mortgage rates have dropped. I think the national average is close to 6.6. Uh, so the overall rate has dropped. Applications went up. Go figure. Uh, the bond market still remains nonplussed about the incoming administration, and I won't say the hoopla, but the completely different economical and market strategy to cut taxes, rely on tariffs, which might sound strange to you, but if you dig back into our history, you'll find that we used to be 100% tariff and no taxes. So with Elon and Vivek promising to audit the IRS and audit the Fed, that could get interesting. I mean, that could get really interesting to significantly cut the corporate tax rate, or just the threat of eliminating personal taxes or significantly lowering personal taxes and relying more on tariffs. That sounds scary to people because it's different, but that sounds really good to me because on our end of things, that gives you money back. Like, think about it. On If we went with a zero individual tax rate, you're missing a percentage of your income every year. And if you're a Christian, God gets 10%. Currently, the government gets more than that. We're paying the government more than God. Like God asked, you can choose to give him more, but the government is demanding that you pay the government more money than God. And when you don't, they take issue with it. So we've created, well, the government itself has created itself to be godlike, but also to get paid better than God. Now, at the same time, Congress oversteps the grounds because they spend our money in all these other places. So getting back on course, kind of reorienting myself, we should have a ton of money, but we don't because Congress spends it. Now, with the Fed cutting rates, right, they jacked rates to control inflation. Some people, a lot of people, maybe the majority of people think the Fed's going to cut rates by a quarter point or 25 basis points next week. But that doesn't make any sense because inflation is still going up. Inflation goes up when money gets devalued. But if the Fed is cutting rates, why is money still being devalued? Meaning, why is somebody still printing money? Because the Fed is quietly printing money, and they have to to keep up with everybody sending money elsewhere. So either by executive order or randomly finding money in the budget or telling Congress they just want to send more money elsewhere. In the last week, we've had Biden and others, which is it's Biden, but it's also his handler. I mean, let's be honest. Biden can't walk a straight line. I mean, he put a piece of paper in his face. He's kind of like Gilderoy Lockhart. He'll sign anything. Excuse me. So to say that Biden's sending money anywhere, I mean, he's the face of the regime, but it's not him. So now we want to send more money to Ukraine. We want to send money to Africa. We want to send money to all of these other places besides investing that money at home to the point where they want to auction off part of the border wall. Part of Trump's plan, his Save America plan, is to, you know, complete the border and protect the border. And the current regime is, hey, let's just sell off the extra stuff. And it's a slap in the face for Trump, but it's a huge slap in the face for you and me. So let's see, orienting back. Uh, the Fed might be cutting rates, but that doesn't make sense because inflation is here and it's going up. So they're not really controlling inflation because they're still printing money. And with inflation sticking around, that leaves us with stagflation or sticky inflation, right? But strangely, the economy continues to hum along because the economy, well, the market in general, the market looks forward. It looks forward like a stumbling toddler, but it still looks forward. So you have the current economy going along, maybe humming along in the hopes of what's coming. We're left with the Biden regime for another month. Trump gets sworn in and his team is prepared to hit the ground running. Not the general, hey, cut us some slack as we figure things out. His team is planning to hit the ground running. And we need that. I mean, the new Treasury Secretary is an entrepreneurship guy. I mean, he knows how to manage debt, he knows how to manage a budget, he knows how to loan money. We need that because he's walking into a crapshoot. I mean, Janet Yellen didn't leave anything in order. She left the Treasury Department in chaos. When rates were super low, she didn't refinance our debt. Think of that. Like her job is to control and help uh, keep the economy and the market and the country humming along. She did not refinance our debt. If you refinanced your house sub 4% 8 years ago, 6 years ago, you made an incredibly smart decision. She didn't make the same decision. It makes no sense unless it's intentional. So she didn't leave things in order. I mean, she crashed the boat and then she intentionally scattered the ashes or scattered the shipwreck. So the guy coming in has a job to do. But can things be turned around? Yes, I think they can because Trump did it, right? And he's put together a better team this time. But in the end, for you and me, that still leaves us in the same question week to week. What's the best investment? Where does that leave us going forward? What's the best thing we can buy now in this market and this economy that we can either see a quick turnaround in profit, right, where you can sell it and roll it forward, or what's the best thing for us long term? Because for the most part, we don't operate in quickness. It's not a day trader's lifestyle. It's what can we buy, what can we gain money on, uh, whether that's 5% dividends. Yeah, 5% dividends, 15% price increase. You get 20% in a year. That'd be amazing, right? Or if it's just dividends over a long period of time. So it's trying to pick the best things we can now for the long-term game plan. And that's different for you and me. We can have similar goals, but your portfolio is yours, my portfolio is mine. I'll be honest in what we buy. And I typically or consistently show our portfolio, and that is our portfolio minus the account number. Excuse me. Uh, Working in the garage today, ton of dust and now allergies. Um, But yeah, it's transparency. I mean, I'm honest with what we buy. I'm honest with what we have. I'm honest with how we spend our money. And that's only fair, saying as I'm giving you strategy videos or strategy content on how we're doing things. So without further ado, here we go. Let me share my screen. All right, this is the sorted out closed-end fund master. I mean, the master itself is over here. It's all 407 funds. And I generally talk about how they're all sorted, so I'm not going to do that today. Excuse me. So we end up with this list of top targets. Now the goal is monthly income and consistent monthly income. The goal is 9% yields unless you can justify picking something at a lower rate. And I guess probably should do this. So me personally, I'm going to take this one off the list, but this it, historically, the current discount is just obscenely well priced. Our goal has been funding our Roth, which is tax free so long as you jump through the hoops. Municipal bonds are also a tax free vehicle. So putting a tax free vehicle inside a tax free vehicle just makes no sense. But it has crossed my mind at some point to do an individual fund of just like an individual cash account fund of just municipal bonds because I mean it's still an individual cash account bond. At the same time, the dividends are tax free. Now the twist of that is if we ever sold a fund, we're paying capital gains on the gains. Inside the Roth, everything, uh, whether capital gains in sale price or capital gains in dividends, it's all tax free so long as you jump through the hoops. So it's an interesting idea with the bond strategy we're on. Just doesn't quite fit the needs overall, or my needs overall, I guess you could say. HFRO stays. It's the most steeply discounted at 56%. So for every dollar invested, you're paying 44 cents on the dollar. That's crazy. And the dividend has gone up because the price has gone down. Otherwise, we're getting rid of everything else nine and under. And strategy wise, I mean, these are the top four of how we're looking at things. So bright green based on current, secondary based in this olive color. If we could get these cheap at discount and it met the current strategy, then yes. Otherwise, this is our focus, which means general stocks are not in the focus. And to prioritize bonds, I mean, even though this is a utility fund, and even though it's at a significant discount, it's not hitting that priority mindset of focusing on bonds and real estate. Excuse me. So that leaves a mix. I mean, this is still tech, and it's significantly, it's that significant discount, but it's not in the area of focus. So that leaves this mix, and I could argue for all, but I'm going to still trim it down to two. So I listened in on the HFRO investor call this week. I still think the fears are oversold. Now, you can argue for and against their decision to invest into themselves. Next Point manager or like Next Point Funds manages this account and they invest heavily into Next Point funds. You can argue for and against that. That's their decision. On my end of things, I still think the fears are oversold. Uh, and hearing how they're invested in the top 5 to 7 positions they have in their portfolio, I do. I think the fears are oversold. And I'm willing to take a risk and be somewhere not many other people are. Now, it's not just me. There are more people saying that the fears are oversold for this company. They're making their dividend payments, they're making their payments as more of their portfolio, more of their square footage comes online, right? Then it should see more profit and hopefully they will increase this dividend. This is a small bond company. This is a bond and a private lending company. This is a mix of bonds. It's kind of almost portfolio mechanics in that it's spread out into individual other individual areas and not streamlined focused into specific things. This used to be a bond fund, but it's always been a shareholder activist fund, but it's now bonds and a lot of other things. So if we're going to prioritize the current market with the future of the economy, the real estate market, the country, everything else, we are still behind pace in the real estate world overall. I mean, we're still building a ton. Uh, Competition is going to go back up as rates come down. Rates dropped a little bit week over week, and just in my area, there's probably 12 more houses for sale. So people want out. The problem is more people are struggling to leave the cheaper rate they have to buy something else. Like, I mean, pick a rate. If you're in a $300,000 house at 4%, that's a lot cheaper payment than the same house at 6.5% or 7%. So just because more homes are on the market doesn't mean people are willing to actually pay the increase. Now the problem is you even if we lower rates a quarter point, it's only going to lower rates a quarter point. And 6.25 or 6.5 is still a lot different than 4 or 3. So I think the current rates are going to stay the same for a little bit, but in the hope of the coming presidency, I'm also hoping they lower. So real estate in general, with that get, there's almost like a gap. Like people are waiting longer to buy homes and longer to have families because they can't afford the home. So in the gap of options, you can live in an apartment longer, you can lease longer, or next point, partner with a group who builds neighborhoods, and it's neighborhoods that are built to lease or neighborhoods that are built to rent. It's not neighborhoods that are built to own. Now, my neighborhood is built to own. I could we could own our house. We could also own another house and rent it. That happens in my neighborhood. We don't have that, but that happens in our neighborhood. Next Point has partnered with somebody who builds the entire neighborhood to look like a single family home neighborhood, except every home is built to rent. And it's not like a third party can come in. It's not like I can come in and buy the property and rent it. They take care of everything. It's like an apartment complex inside a single family home suburb. It's a very interesting idea, but what it allows people to do is to get out of an apartment and actually own a house, and they bridge the gap. Now, what happened? I don't know if it's a Chris Crone thing where it's like a lease to own house. I don't know if they do that. I don't know what the contracts are. I don't know what the turnover is. I just know that it's an interesting gap between not owning a house for forever and owning a house tomorrow. It's an interesting bridge. Uh, and I can argue, like, so all of these funds, we own all of these funds already. They're coded in blue. We own them. CIF is a super small, maybe not super small. It on that pendulum. It's on one end, and then FCO is on the other end of that pendulum swing. So you have a small corporate bond fund, which you have uh, the corporate media pushing people away from bonds. So that's generally a good sign of where you should be, just outside of the data itself. If they're pushing you away from something, you kind of have to wonder why and do some thinking and then think maybe I should be somewhere else. But as good as their discount is, and this discount is shrinking as well. They've narrowed the discount a little bit on the company since we bought it. Uh, but if I'm going to hyper focus on where we are and where we're headed, I can't go with just bonds. Just bonds, I think, are great, but I can't go with just bonds. I also don't think it's so bonds and stocks. I don't think that's the best place to be for us overall. So we want to focus on bonds and real estate. But what really differs these two companies and this one is the private lender status. FCO is a corporate bond powerhouse, just like CIF. Just they're in different market caps. You've got a $50 million company compared to a company at like 2.3 billion, which is probably higher right now. FCO is uh, just laden with corporate bonds. We want that. We want consistent income. But what sets them apart from the others is that it's also a private lender, which is like a business development company. So knowing the guy who comes in or knowing the guy who's going to take over as uh, secretary treasury or treasury secretary is an entrepreneur guy who knows how to invest, knows how to manage debt, right? Knows how to run a business and knows all about small businesses. You can project, I don't want to say assume, but you can kind of project that an entrepreneur guy wants to get the economy humming through small business development. And the best way to do that is through small business loans. And it's not like the personal loan you would get at your bank. I mean, your bank will still finance an entry level small business at 50 grand. We're not talking about that. We're talking like, 50 million plus kind of loan. So an actual small business development company or just a business development company is poised to do well in the coming presidency or the coming term. So a company that does both private lending or business development and is just superbly crafted or constructed on corporate bonds, that company has an advantage over the other bond companies. So to focus on those two areas and to focus on companies that meet the data points, it's got to be these two. So if we were investing tomorrow, which we're not, if we were investing tomorrow, I would buy more of both of these. Uh, why aren't we investing tomorrow? Partly of what's already in there. Um, so if we look back at funding, yes, this is part of our portfolio, and I keep track of it all. So we've got about $700 we can add to, which would push that to around 700-ish, 775. So that would go 12, a little bit more than 13. This is the individual brokerage company or account. Two funds that we continue to watch are these two. And I'm still weighing this in my head. Is it worthwhile to keep these companies in hopes that they go up in the coming presidency? You've got a company focused in utility and energy transfer and like a 75-25 equity to bonds. And then another one, same split, that's mostly tech. And in the current market, it's almost like I would invert or flip this number, 75-25 bonds to equity. So is it worth the wait? That's pretty much where I am right now. That I haven't figured out. So if it's not worth the wait, if it's better to sell these, wait for the stuff to finalize, max out our contribution for the year, hold over the rest, right? And then January, whatever, add the next allotment versus waiting to see if they go up, to be honest. Uh, and I'm almost split either way. Like I'm on the edge of the coin. I can argue for both. So on my end, I just got to think about it more. If it's more advantageous to sell now, then yes, we would sell, we would boost our funds, and we would buy both. If we had to pick, I mean, we have enough for 50 of one, right? But if we had the money, I mean, I would love to buy an equal set of both. But if we only had this amount, like if we had 566, well, I mean, that's all we have. So yeah, we could pick up 50 there, but y'all know I like even numbers. So I would pick up 100 here. So it really comes down to your own preference and your own strategy. Bonds, private lending, business development, knowing the guy incoming is going to be heavily focused on entrepreneurship and small business and managing the money a lot better than the lady in front of him, right? Really, nobody right now because the chair is empty. Or real estate. And yes, it's commercial real estate, and I know the fears about the commercial real estate market, but the fears on the commercial real estate market are for currently unoccupied, unused buildings. These guys are repurposing currently unoccupied, unused buildings into something else. So it's that process as they transition whatever into something else. And the more square footage that comes online, it's just more beneficial to me. So if it's risky to be somewhere that most people are not, and I'm okay with that. So I'll leave it there. I mean, those are my I can talk not in circles, but I can talk for a while on both, but it'd just be saying the same thing. I want to hyper focus on bonds, and in this case, bonds and business development and real estate, looking forward to that new administration. And I don't want to be like all, uh, can't even, can't even think of the word right now. That's not good. I don't want to be all like, oh, we'll see what happens. It's not that. It's I'd rather be, especially in HFRO, I would much rather be early to the party than late and miss it. So if that means dealing with crazy discounts, which is fine because it gives me an insane deal, I'm okay with that, and I'm willing to buy in before the rest. So uh, private lending, business development, bonds, and real estate, looking towards the coming market and the coming economy. And honestly, that's all I got. So if you like the content, then please consider subscribing to my channel. Uh, it if you enjoy the content, like the videos, because it really does help push things out, you can comment on videos. I respond on videos, or I respond to comments. You can also find me on Instagram at the same adapted perspective handle, and I post on everything. Uh, I post memes, I post strategy, scholarship advice for either soon to be or current college students, as well as how to integrate that into an actual financial strategy from start to finish. Really, not finish because the financial strategy never ends, but from a starting point, pointing towards the direction you should go. And it's not like me telling you the direction to go because it's your journey, but it's giving you some steps and some guidance to help you along in your journey. Uh, that's really all I got. So I hope you have a great week. And yeah, feel free to drop a comment. Feel free to find me on Instagram. And if I don't see you in either of those places, then I will see y'all on another video. So see y'all later. Bye bye.